so we hit the third turn, and we got a rather significant random event here, rain. Zones of control don't extend across fords, nor do they extend across creeks not crossed by roads or pikes. We'll see why, because of movement. The attacker loses one off all combat die rolls, cannot be made across fords, creeks, unless there's a road or pike. If they're crossed by a road or pike, they're going to give a +3 modifier like a real river would to the defender. If a leader enters a hex through a hex site crossed by a road, it expends 2 movement points instead of 1. This doesn't affect pikes, just the roads. Now they've become clear terrain, so you're not going to see as much movement now. Leaders in supply lines can cross minor or major rivers only at bridges. Oh, you know what? I might have been able to bring Breckenridge in. I don't know if the Valley cycle phase is skipped, in which case Breckenridge couldn't come in, or if it still is played even though you don't roll. I suspect it's skipped, but we'll see how it's worded. It would be rather weird to bring him back after we committed those 4 strength points, but leaders in support. But then again, there's an extra strength point there. That leaders in supply lines can cross minor and major rivers only at bridges, never at fords. Leaders in supply lines can cross creeks only through roads and pikes. Creeks not crossed by roads and pikes are impassable. Can't build any bridges, and that's it. Whew. Going back to the Valley cycle last turn, I don't see anything here that prevents Breckenridge from coming in with his strength point. The Valley's been lost. I can bring him in at Richmond or Manchester or any unoccupied or occupied Confederate railroad station that can trace back to Cobham Station. Now, I can actually do this because these guys are not in entrenchments. So, it's Longstreet at a station. I'd like to boost his strength, but he is not. So I don't have any at a station. I'm going to put him over here at Hanover Junction. And, I mean, that makes up for some of the forces and leaders that I threw out because of the Union success there, right? All right. So Union depots, all the Union depots are going to shift over here. We won't bring the cannon with us. I have this right side now. Supply, I can trace supply for everyone. I counted these, I counted everything else. We're good. Make sure. It may be different because of the streams. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. You can still make it to Sheridan. And it was kind of the extreme route, and here we got roads and stuff going across those creeks. So that's assumed to be bridged, I guess. Or fordable. Okay. Our next is embarkation to late. I could begin railroad destruction on the Virginia and Central. I would like to be doing it down here sometime, but I don't know. Let's flip through some rolls. I probably don't have enough troops in the location to do it. Has to be a leader with combat value of 4 or more. I've got 4 here, but they're not under 1 leader, so I can't do it. And I can't combine those leaders. Okay. Reinforcements, it's turn 3. Now, reinforcements. Union gets +1 on the die. Confederates get -1 on the die. So it's going to be 3-2 with the Union getting 3. Where am I going to put them? Well, I got to kind of count up my cav because I would prefer to have cav over anything else, obviously. Confederates gave Stuart a point, and that's all he can hold. I think they can hold one more cav reinforcement, but all my Confederate cav has been consolidated. And Longstreet won. For the Union, I gave Sheridan a point. I give one over to Hinks here, who can go march on Petersburg. Hey, that's pretty much been evacuated. This wouldn't normally be the case. Normally there would be reserve units down here, but the Valley situation made me need the forces from Richmond and Petersburg, and I gave a point to Gilmore. This is a reaction to the Petersburg, to the Valley situation. Now, what can I do with this? Well, Hinks is going to go for Petersburg. I don't know, it'll take him a while to get there, but whatever. He's got his supplies here. Gilmore is probably not going to take his full force, but he's going to try to take these out. Ooh. Is this one of them? No. So it's Drury's Bluff. I'm going to take Chaffin's Bluff out, too. Chaffin's Bluff is over here. All right. Maybe I don't want to take... I could bridge it down here with one of my special bridges. Okay, I'll tell you what. I'm not going to give Gilmore strength because I don't believe that he can take Chaffin's Bluff out, which means I'll put that additional point. Put one of my corps down here. Longstreet's a 5. Hull's a 7. Ewell's a 7. I'll give that additional point over to Sedgwick. And now I'd be allowed to attach, and I don't think we're in a position where anything can be attached. I think if there was an attachment, it's already been done. Confederates got the first initiatives and moved their entire army, held Longstreet, Ewell back a little bit. Not enough. There's still a crack right here. Now, the Union can't just bypass that, but all they're facing is Longstreet. He's one of the weaker commanders in terms of total force. They might just fight. Additional Confederate forces. Geez, I don't know. I've got, these guys are fairly small forces, but they might be enough. I mean, one of them might be enough to prevent Hinks from getting anywhere. So that's one thing to consider. On the other hand, the two of them together might be enough to help swing the balance over here, which would be even more important, and it's really tough. Confederate withdrawal, they don't have many more forces of any value. There's been a ping-ponging back and forth, but you got Hinks, tried to move, failed. Gilmore came out with a significant amount of forces when he saw Ransom heading down towards Petersburg. Enough to handle him. Send Couts out here, maybe burn a railway station, provide some support there. Burnside's forces not doing anything of value. Stevenson didn't even move. Others heading forward, but over here, Breckinridge pushed into that location. I'm holding on to Stuart to rally him so that Sheridan can't just shove him out of the way if it turns out that that's what the Union wants to do. I'm not sure that they'd want to at this point. Their supply line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Doesn't reach that far, so that may have been a little curvy, but I think it needed to be during the rain. So I don't know that it's particularly good, but he's got units he wants to reform. But now, the Union can do whatever it likes, pretty much. With nothing threatening down here. Now, new troops can show up, I know in Richmond and Manchester, something like that. I don't know about Petersburg, which could threaten the Union supply down there. So I probably want to leave a strength point like I did here under Ames, just to keep like an odd little force from being able to cause much damage. But beyond that, and I don't know, maybe I would resurrect these guys to take command, although my feeling is they're off in the valley now, you know. But I may want to try to move Smith. It's hard for him to coordinate with Gilmore, but in terms of defeating Ransom, they might be able to do it. And then I can't cross the James. These are all like permanent Confederate bridges. That's just to understand some of the topography here in terms of I'm not going to be able to attack across those bridges at all. I have to make my own bridge across the James. I can't make it across the navigable portion until I get an event, and down here is within range of the Drury's Bluff problem. So I could conceivably cross it up here, but that doesn't help me one bit. So now really it's the disposition of the main Army of the Potomac and how they want to be in place for the next action cycle. Here is this river line. It gets me about this far. That's it. And that's one reason why I shift behind the river the way I did, rather than trying to make a cut from here. It's just really hard to keep your supply in that primary supply range, and you really don't want to be outside of it. Now, my move is to make a jump down to these supply lines, but they're not available next turn. I have to start building them this turn, and then next turn they would become, accessible. And then beyond that, I still have to make a shift in that direction. And it's kind of a tricky thing, crossing Chickahominy is not trivial. It's a minor river. It's going to be causing me problems. So pretty much, yeah, I can kind of set myself up for attacks on Longstreet and scare him away. Interesting maneuvering going on over here. First of all, Sheridan smacked into Stuart, and it was kind of inconclusive, but then I was able to bring, as I was bringing other forces down, Sedgwick was able to get a good roll and get an attack on Stuart. Well, he would have been able to make an attack on Stuart. Stuart screened him, ran away. Sedgwick had enough move to push his way. Now he's out of supply there. How terrible is that? Well, it doesn't matter for 2 more action cycles. I can always pull back, but I'm actually thinking about sitting out of primary supply because that's holding the bridge line across the river. And although I can't do it this turn, next turn, at the cost of, maybe a strength point and some weakness to Sedgwick's force, maybe I can pound through here in time to be able to be supplied running off the I can't read that, Pamkni or something like that. And being able to then really start laying siege to Richmond. This is one of the flaws I see to the game. When I play it, when I played it solitaire most of the times, I end up trying to just muscle my way through and be Grant. But if you just admit that you're not going to be able to do that. Now, you can get points off the casualties, there's no question of that. But if you just admit you're not going to be able to do that, you can make a lot of ground by your movement choices. Now, there's some interplay of the initiative in there. But for the most part, I think it's fairly likely that the Union will be able to force bridges behind the Confederate lines, or the Confederates will end up never really being able to form the defensive line that they want. And the distance, yeah, basically what happens is the Union just keeps pushing down and down and down until eventually they get the lucky initiative or whatever and can cross behind the Confederate line. Now, a problem is there's this river and this river. You got to do it a couple of times, but we were able to do it here. Now, maybe I didn't play the Confederates as well as I should have. I wouldn't be shocked by that. But yeah, I mean, a lot of ground has been given up. Now, on the bright side, I don't have the Union behind me, which means I should be able to withdraw and form a line in front of Richmond. But it's pretty damn hard to prevent the Union from being able to gain territory if they want it. And once they gain territory and you fall back, then they can go back and burn railway stations and stuff like that. Send some cav to do that, whatever. Grab the victory points there. The biggie is to get down here and start contesting in this area, ripping up railroads, whatever. What does that do for you? I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, starting on turn 6, you start being able to embark units and move them elsewhere, so I'm not sure it's that huge a thing. Maybe it's more important to get the fighting done. Let's see what the turn 3 scenario victory conditions are. I'm sure I'm not meeting them as the Union, but I've actually specifically gone out of my way not to pay attention to them and just go for the main victory conditions. You need points. So it's going to be 7 to 11 points. And we're not going to see that, but we might see it if I can break this, which I certainly could. Burnsides could have spent the turn wrecking the railway. That's 6 points right there, I believe. Yeah, 6 points for the Virginia Railway. So, I certainly could have made those points. I just don't want to focus on them. I thought there were actually, like in some of the early scenarios, there were locations you wanted to get, which obviously I'm not going for. But no, it's based on the same victory point situation. It's just there's no reason for me to be scoring my points yet. I might as well try to position myself so that I can score them all easier as time goes on. So I got some units to flip over, and then we push into the second action cycle. The Union opens up the second action cycle of this rainy turn, activating Hancock. I don't know quite what he was hoping to do, maybe overrun Breckinridge or something, but he ended up moving here, interfering with Ewell's withdrawal, which is kind of a big deal because all of these fords are not operable, which means Ewell can basically move to here and no further. He could attack Hancock if he wanted, but he's outnumbered. So that's going to kind of slow things down some more. Now, the Union has to be careful. I can take the hit for Sedgwick, but Hancock is also, I believe, out of supply. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 15. Not quite. And, I mean, I'm tracing as the crow flies. That may not be acceptable. That creek is uncrossable right now. So if there's rain next turn, we got, a supply problem. But that's okay. We're going to assume that rain is not very likely. I mean, we can find that out. We can look here, and we see it happens only on a 2 or 12. This is a major, major rain event. Now, a lot of the Confederate leaders, Longstreet, Hill, they need to recuperate. So they're not really in a position where they can run down and deal with Sedgwick at this point. But Sedgwick really doesn't have much further he can go and do any damage. So I feel pretty safe taking a recoup turn and trying to get Ewell out of the way. Got a couple of initiatives. Hinks ended up moving some of Burnside's forces. Hey, we burnt the big point one. That means we're bypassing Cobham Station. That's a victory point we're losing, you know. And then the Union finally got an initiative. They forced the Confederates to go, and I rolled for Ewell. I had some thoughts of maybe trying to drive down this way, cut Sedgwick off even worse. So here's one of the things. If I'm back here, I'm in supply from this, actually, because the Union's not set up to block that, and that rail line's still going up. But it's an exposed position, and I need to get Ewell with the rest of my forces. So he only moved one movement point when he had like 5, but actually, yeah, no stream there. Got to make sure, because I would have liked to have moved him further. Right then, the cycle winds down with Gilmore moving up against Ransom, Couts burning and moving. Burnside burned something. Gregg and whoever's under him. Wilson. Are moving up to threaten these rails here. Burn them a little quicker so that Burnside can gather his forces. Burnside can make it as far as here and still be in likely supply, I believe. This is about the edge of Union supply here. But what it does is it prevents Ewell from getting out with full movement points, because we can do a cav retreat when Ewell's activated. The disadvantage to that is we've got both units stacked there, which was kind of a mistake, because they'll both get disordered if they both run away. If they don't both run away, one of the Union, you know what? I'm gonna leave Gregg back here and let Wilson do the only screening. I moved to the edge of supply. I don't know particularly why I would do that. Next turn or next cycle, if I could push further down or whatever to this bridge and burn things, I would have to have enough movement points to fall back to the location I'm in. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. All of the other Union leaders want to recuperate or fortify. One possible exception is maybe I could use Sedgwick to attack Colquitt here. Not sure how valuable this location actually is. It's kind of a problem because I'm beyond supply line, which means he's not going to be in good shape. And to get down to these guys, I got to bust through some nasty shit. And that may not be easy. But holding the location seems important to me. And the Confederate pieces, I mean, see, the thing is there's a stream between him and Colquitt, which means I have to push this way, and any forces are going to have to kind of punch through the Confederates that are sitting up their hill in Longstreet in order to get down that road. And things are going to be fortified and in place. Breckinridge is kind of holding this bridge because Warren is kind of weak. An attack against, crossing the bridge, that's like a 3-point modifier in penalty. So the 6-to-1 odds or whatever it is, throw General Lee in, and that becomes a close fight. And what are we looking at in a close fight? Well, we're looking at the attacker with a fair amount of strength, which could result in a loss more easily than this, which is what the defender's sitting on. So by having a smaller force, I'm less likely to get hurt. I'm more likely to just get away, which seems like a reasonable trade-off. Anyway, we'll go with the end of the action cycle, flipping things over, but we do have some forts to place and whatnot. Next cycle opens up with the Union getting the initiative, Ewell having to move, or choosing to move, because the Union threw the initiative, punted, and then using Wilson over here to interfere with his movement, and he didn't get very far because of it. Let's see what the next initiative is. I don't know why. It's another Union initiative. They're probably going to punt it again. Just get all the Confederate movement out of the way before I shift my own forces where I want them. I don't know how much more Confederate there is, to tell you the truth, because this kind of entrenchment situation going on here is kind of useful. Quite a bit's happened. After Longstreet moved down here, the Union got a number of actions, continuing moving Burnside down. Couts burning stuff here, Hinks moving closer to siege Petersburg. By the time he gets to get an attack in, he'll have another strength point, I think. And not a lot over here. The Confederates, Breckinridge, sliding back kind of slowly. That opens a possibility for the Union to go into here, but I don't want to take that yet. And now the next action, Hill detached Anderson and sent him over to join Longstreet. I would have really liked him over here with Colquitt, but the problem is I won't have a corps commander there. So I won't have a single leader capable of either attacking or providing support or whatever. My eventual position might be that I want forces gathered here, but right now this looks like a decent place to be holding. It may not be, though. Maybe I want to move Hill too. I'm not sure yet. The optimal might be getting Hill down here, let Ewell slip over down there with Breckinridge, because right now I can kind of run away. The Union's at the end of their supply line here, basically. This line here is pretty much the end they can go. They're going to have to pull Sheridan back. I'm not sure whether I really want Sedgwick there, but now that everything's gathering there, and a move over to the right flank makes sense. The problem is there's no supply down there, none whatsoever, and no sign of it, nowhere I can get it. All I can do is try to bypass the Confederate line and maybe, slip through in the next turn. There is something weird in this, and I've been looking at the derivative game, Great Campaigns of the American Civil War. I've actually been looking at Stonewall Jackson's Way, which I think is the first of it, but I'm not sure. A reprint of it, but not the Stonewall Jackson's Way 2, just a later printing by Avalon Hill, I think. But anyway, it clears some of these problems up. So like this 3 action cycles in between turns, that's something similar to some other games that we've looked at. The one that sticks to my mind is God Kings, where there's this sort of, okay, enforcing a game turn sequence always is going to enforce a little bit of structure that isn't real, right? There's an abstraction of, when you have to be in supply and stuff like that. You're not going to be able to, you have to judge supply at specific moments. But in a situation where you have these 3 movement phases and you only have to make it in supply at the end of that sequence, that's a little weird, right? That kind of creates this situation where, I can run out of supply for
2 turns, but they have to be, or 2 actions, but they have to be the right 2 actions. It's not like it's always available. It's not like there's a decreasing supply or something. The Great Campaigns handles that. It puts the structure around each move. Now, there's something really cute about this, and I actually like the kind of thinking that it generates. But I don't like the historic, and it's a simple way to represent it, but I don't like how it doesn't actually seem to reflect reality, you know? And there are some other facets in it. So for, you know, I've just been looking at the first couple of pages in some of the designer notes. The idea that there's no tactical combat in this, no tactical combat value for the different leaders, which I don't know how much of an effect it should have. I mean, the general leave bonus of +1 is probably the limit of what you should see, and maybe that's what you see in Great Campaigns. I see numbers that vary quite a bit more, but who knows, you know, that may be to determine a +1 bonus, or it may be that the combat charts are smoother, so it has less effect. Anyway, where we were is basically, yeah, the Union will have a couple of action cycles to try to slip by the Confederates. And then if they fail, they have to fall back and try to make their way back into supply. But none of that matters until I get supplies down there, or on this side, but that, unless I'm running around here, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So yeah, there's kind of a bit of trickiness to this. All right, onward, I guess. I think I've expressed whatever it was I wanted to say. I decided to move Hill down, and he made it all the way down, which means he'll be able to incorporate Colchester into his force. Hopefully Ewell and Breckinridge, or Breckinridge will find some place that he can join in with. He's not going to be helpful next turn, but this looks like it's going to be my defensive line, is somewhere in this general area. I may have to bop around a bit. Luckily I have the breastwork starting up here. I'm abandoning this one because it's too far forward when they've chosen this location. You know, actually, maybe the Union don't want to pause. Maybe they want to pull Sedgwick out of there now that the Confederates have committed to defending that line. Because I'm not going to get a good breakthrough there. Yeah, let's get out of there. Let's undo what we did. I don't know. I don't think we paid much to do it. So that's 6 movement. 1, 2, 3, 4. Who's here? It's a corps leader. I don't really need to be on top of a corps leader, but whatever. Location-wise, it's where I kind of want to be. And that'll pull me all back into supply. And I've kind of faked the Confederates into their location. Down here, Gilmore is waiting. He's gonna start entrenching. We've got, I guess, Stuart's entrenching. Confederates already passed, so there's not much they can do there. Could have probably thrown Stuart somewhere over here or something to delay any movements there, but anyway, that's where we're sitting. And other than the entrenchments, there's not a lot of excitement going on here. And we'll catch the end of turn stuff. And the net effect of the Union, I think I'm actually going to put my supply base here. Although I'd kind of like to protect this with the supply base. It's too easy for the Confederates to run a unit over there and break up whatever I'm doing. Whereas here they have to actually garrison these ports to prevent my supplies from happening. So, and I can use the ports as long as the Confederates aren't in them. Of course, these aren't going to be ready for this turn. And we push our way into turn 4, which is what, May 19th. The scale's different in the two games too. So this is a much that turns are several days. The hexes I think are 2 miles each instead of 1. Not sure, but anyway, yeah. The Union field. So this is a lot of what the game kind of should be. Is this, I make a move, you make a counter move, and now I maneuver to get away from that situation because I've made you commit to something else. And now you've given me some territory here that maybe you didn't have to, but my little feint there forced you to it gave you a reason to react. It really isn't a forcing. And it may be an overreaction. Forgot about these guys. And that's just sort of the nature of the way the game works. Not necessarily easy to play solo, but when I swap hats, sometimes I see things a little differently. Sometimes I don't. Most of the times I've played this, it's followed a very historical path. But this time I've decided to try to slip behind the Confederates a little faster. And I don't know if I'm being more clever with the Confederates. I mean, the time that I got screwed way up here, trying to hold the line, where you really do want to kind of halt the Union for a little while, because I expected them to try to batter their way through, being Grant and all. Unfortunately, I was facing Rosengrant. All right. This turn 4. The random event was Lee is sick again. Probably not too big a deal this turn. Union depots. I can't move them yet. So we're still there. Supply. Everything's actually in supply. We calculated that all out last time, but I double checked. No embarkation, no railroad destruction. This is actually a bit of a problem. If Burnside was in a position where he could destroy the railroad right now, that would have been fantastic. Alternately, if I wasn't on the RF and P here, if I was down here on the Virginia Central, that would be great. But I didn't manage to push down there, and this is actually one reason to have left Sedgwick there, but he may have had to be in supply to do that. I didn't check that. Anyway, I'll be able to get those points at some point, I hope. It only takes 4 strength points, and right now I don't really have the big advantage in strength, so in fact, our reinforcements came in kind of weak for the Union. This is the die roll, so it was 3 to 5, so the Confederates actually got more strength points. Speaking of which, the reinforcements, both Hoke showed up. Hinks took a strength point. Down here, I think we took another one with Ransom. I brought Hoke back. At the very least, I could have grabbed somebody from one of the corps, but it feels like there wouldn't be all 3 divisional commanders off the board, so what the hell. I don't think it makes much difference either way, but it helped my sense of being reasonable not to have part of a corps down there for some reason. Not that it matters much, because we shifted 3rd Corps, whatever this is. Anderson is now part of 1st Corps, and Colquitt has joined the 3rd Corps. It's fairly liberal with that shifting. Confederates increased some of the strength down here and absorbed forces, as mentioned. And that's about it. Between the attachment and the reinforcements, kind of took care of everything. I think this is going to be kind of a dead turn. The Confederates probably are going to try to shift and get a better position to face the Union, who's probably setting themselves up to maybe try to bust through or something. But here's the thing. Well, this is actually the turn. This is the turn. These 3 cycles is when the Union's going to make its shift down. So the Confederates actually have to be kind of careful here. The Union can try to push down this way and go around. see if that works. Potentially, they could slide down over the James even and get supplies from over there. It's definitely a possibility. Another side of things is, like I said, run around here or try to make the move over there. Any of these could work. We've got a couple of options as to where we want to build our supplies. Meanwhile, Burnside, I don't know. I really don't know what's up with him. He probably wants to get into supply over with the rest of the Army of the Potomac, wherever that is. And it doesn't have to be all together. So he could slide down this way and threaten the Confederates from behind. He doesn't have to be in supply until the end of the cycles, all 3 cycles. So that's an interesting opportunity for him. Unfortunately, Burnside is not very fast, and his little divisions are even slower. So it's, he might not be able to get there. Luckily for him, he doesn't have the rain to contend with anymore, so he can get down to the mountain road, whatever that is. All right. With Lee sick, the Confederates have been winning all the initiatives, and let's see what we get. Burnside, his forces moving and burning things. Coutts also burnt and is moving about to do some damage there. If this keeps going, Wilson, I kind of need him to stand in place because he's got, his units are disorganized, so he doesn't have enough strength, even with a cavalry reinforcement, to move forward. Sheridan and Gregg could both run around and burn some stuff over here and maybe try to slip around behind the Confederates and cause them problems in terms of their possible reactions. Continues to make semi-pass actions, like Gregg came down to hit Hampton here at 2-to-1 odds. That Lee bonus being available. Hey, what the hell? Yeah, he didn't do anything. Also shifted Smith up here for what that's worth. But then the Confederates lost the initiative a couple of times. They fortified here, which actually means Hinks lost a potential where he could have made a 1-to-1 attack. Probably okay with that. But then we forced the Confederates to go again and now began to regret that we hadn't done something, which is because Ewell split his force in half and sent Jubal early up here. And yeah, it's a smaller force, but it's only 2-to-1 odds crossing the river. That's not pleasant. I hope, of course, it does force, yeah, there's no woods there at least. It does force the Union, or the Confederates, to use up one of their leaders. Now, I could have used up Breckinridge, who's pretty weak, or sent, part of Hill's force forward or something like that. But when I looked at things, I was like, yeah, I kind of want to cover that hex, because otherwise the Union could come smashing down here through Breckinridge. Yes, it's not a guaranteed opening, but it could kind of cause some serious problems to the Confederate position. And then the Union says, oops, yeah, we had an opening, didn't we? I don't know how good a one it was. It didn't fit in with the plan that I've been conceiving of for the Union, which is not bashing their way through. But, and as it is, Early's now pinned, he moved, right? But it's not a full force that got pinned. Both ways that way, right? Confederates got the initiative. They really didn't want to move another unit if they could help it, so they passed it. And Hancock smashed through and took Hanover Junction here. Now, that if he had an extra movement point, he only had 3 at this point. He could have hit Early and done a lot of damage. He got a good amount of movement points. Only on a 6 would he have been able to hit Early, as it was he rolled a 5, I think. And now this is looking a lot more questionable. And the Union's holding an important location here. I'm not using the garrison destroyed markers. I really don't think, I think they just confuse things, to tell you the truth. First of all, they should be on the back of the garrisons. I get the feeling there was kind of a, we're not sure which way we should go. But if there's a marker underneath the space, I might confuse it with a garrison. As it is, it's pretty obvious there's no garrison there. So, not just because Hancock's sitting there, but because there's nothing on there. And now the Union has some choices, and again, possible end run this way, possible push that way. They want to delay as much as possible, but getting Hancock where he is definitely causing the Confederates a little bit of a headache. I'm playing with Cav. Stuart comes over, burns, Sheridan comes over, burns the railway station. Stuart moves up here. Now he could have moved a whole hell of a lot further, but he only wants to move to here because if he moves up to this hex, he has to retreat right. He has to make his choice right away, whether or not to retreat. By being here, Sedgwick and who's under there, Warren would have to decide to actually one or the other to move into that hex. And I actually am trying to direct the Union this way. It might be for good or ill, but what it means is that I can shift forces to defend over on the South Anna instead of worrying about trying to run a coverage of this entire river here. But I may be having to make choices that I don't like, you know. So, for example, moving units ahead of time to start covering some of the crossings for the South Anna, because there are a lot of crossings there. So, not only Early will be out outside of Fuel, but Longstreet and Hill will probably end up splitting their forces as well. But if I get the edge and force the Union to make the first move, well, they got Hinks. I could do, I don't want to do anything with Hinks and just flip them over and not entrench or anything. But otherwise, the Union has to kind of declare their move with the only remaining units they have. The Union has the advantage, though, because Lee's not feeling too well. And Sedgwick chases Stuart away, finds his place at the bridge line again. This is kind of a dangerous position, though. Before, he would have been entrenched in here. Of course, she also would have been disorganized. But now Longstreet could conceivably schwack him with Hill's support. It ends up being an even fight. Hill attacking would be bad because he'd be crossing the stream, which you don't want to do. Never cross the streams. I don't know what to do. I don't know who has initiative, but I don't know what people will do if they can choose the initiative, basically. So the Union has their choice. Do they want to come down with Warren and, try to smack Longstreet out of the way? So Warren's got a 9. I think he's fortified, but I don't know. He's got a 9. Longstreet's got an 8, so it would be 1-to-1. The woods would be a penalty. This would be an edge. I'd be hitting it even. I think that's pretty good for the Union, to tell you the truth. The only real risk here is that Stuart slips around behind me sometime and fortifies. I don't know. Hancock's already committed over here. Yeah, let's take the initiative. See if we can do it. And we get 9, which probably means we can. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now, those woods would cost me 6 to enter. Shit. I forgot about that. So I'm only going to have 3 left, but I'll be set up. But I'll be hitting fortified little works. Shit, no. I don't know if I want to do this. I think I was here. Facing Early. Hancock is next to Early, I would have support. I'd be crossing a minor river on a bridge, though. That's 3 points shift. I'd have 2 to 1, that's +1. +2. I'd be at -1 hitting Early. Might drive him back, but then I'm in kind of some nasty terrain. Maybe I want to swing in the other direction because Sedgwick's putting a threat in this direction. Maybe I shouldn't have moved first, but I rolled my dice, so I'll move my mice. 4, 5. I can bypass 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And now I'm threatening at another location. Now, worst comes to worst, if the Confederates start splitting their forces up to cover all the entrances that I'm passing through, or that I'm threatening, I can drop a division behind as my inactive force when I move, and that'll give me, support if I've got enough strength there. I think we're done with most of the Union units. Hinks is the one option. I'd rather entrench him just in case things go terribly wrong, so I'll probably just leave him alone. The Confederates, though, have to make some serious thought as to they're going to have to cover Warren. So I'll roll. We'll see what ends up happening. It's going to force the Confederates to move, and I do not know what to do, quite honestly. The Union make an attack that they don't want to make. All right, so here's the problem. Ewell has to kind of stay where he is because that's protecting from Hancock getting across. Longstreet and Hill, one of them fortifying would protect things somewhat. Somewhat. With Sedgwick being the only one down here, I kind of feel safe, I guess, sending a whole corps back up. The problem is neither of these is very big. We've got an 8 here and a 7 here. Warren is a 9, so if, let's say I split Longstreet into 2, and I don't know if he has any good divisional leaders. He doesn't, so he'll probably be rolling all by himself. So if he moves up here, 1, 2, 3. See, the problem is that Warren can slip around behind him. I don't have something to get in his way, so I probably have to split Longstreet to begin with and move half his force. And I think I want to keep Hill concentrated, even though the road here is open. Sedgwick really can't do much on his own, although he can break a division off and start creating problems for Hill, but jeez. It's just things are so open. And of course, Sedgwick can always go up and take this location, which has a ford attached to it. All right. And I hope that's what they are. Yeah. So it is also an in-supply location, and it drives, it doesn't destroy the breastworks, but it gets rid of a potential defensive location that the Confederates could be sitting in, which they're not. It's just kind of painful, and this game always seems to give you these painful choices where you're just in a position where maybe you can't get around the enemy, or you figure out how to and then they've got a hard time. But I really feel like I have to cover Warren because otherwise he's capable of buzzing through or cutting from behind here. Fucking Ewell. Maybe I move Ewell. Let's see what we got here. If I drop Ewell to here, there's still the road down here. That's a risk. I mean, Warren's just so free. If I push Ewell back to here, Early can still get out eventually in Breckinridge, but Hancock can drive down here, take this out, and maybe even keep moving. So I feel like Ewell's got to sit where he is. I just don't think I have a choice except to split Longstreet off. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to split half of Hill into here, because then I'm moving 2 units. What if I move both Hill and Longstreet and just leave divisions behind for Hancock to face? That's a possibility. Things are finally boiling down to something similar to the campaign where the Union might actually be attacking. Not in a great position, though. So, first of all, what about these guys? Confederates built a bridge. First of all, we got breastworks over here. Stuart does not get them. Breastworks here defending against Hancock. Over here, Longstreet and Hill have moved the main portion of their corps up to face Warren, and possibly Burnside if he's cutting down. And the Union's on a time limit. They have to find a way. Sedgwick is actually, as long as the rain doesn't come or something, and maybe even if it does, I doubt it. Things get kind of tangled over there. Sedgwick's actually in range that he can reach there. And the problem is, if Stuart entrenches, Sedgwick's going to have to put a unit there in order to permit a flow of supplies getting in there. Remember, he's not able to hit here, so 6th Corps is probably moving down there very shortly at the end of this turn, or beginning of the next. But Early could be a threat in that direction, and that would be a potential problem. All depends on timing. Sedgwick will probably be active, but maybe the Union will have to pass and not move Sedgwick so that Early would get a shot to get in there. It's possible. Not with Lee sick, I guess. Not very likely, because there's a lot of Union leaders. We get the Cav standoff down here. That's about it. Okay. Union taking this little curve that they've taken. They're a little bit ahead of schedule right now. Not much. In this turn, the Confederates are fighting along the North Anna, trying to defend, Hannaford Junction or whatever, up there, which has already fallen. But we're basically now trying to hold the line just a little south of where the Confederates historically were. So I don't know how terrible it is. Timing-wise, the Union, one way or another, can run around to that supply depot. One question is whether or not I've tied them down enough. We'll see. But whether I've tied them down enough with guys like Warren out here that they're really not able to get into supply, because maybe they try to bash their way through and don't succeed. On the other hand, if I take that high-risk option and try to blast my way through, maybe I get right through and I'm down near Richmond and everything is terrible for the Confederates. It's the first activation in the second cycle, or first initiative in the second cycle. I think they're going to force the Confederates to take the activation. I think the Confederates are going to pull Early out of there. I don't know where he's going to end up. Plenty of interesting places. One thing I have to consider is whether I have to stretch out in this direction, or if I want to try to reinforce some of those units in the breastworks back down there. That's, closer to Richmond, and that way, if some sort of run is attempted in that direction, I can pull whatever unit's under him, which sounds safer overall. Like, a march in this direction is really iffy. The Union could end up getting tied. If they don't make it down to about here, they will not be in supply over there, and that can cause problems. Since I've been kind of diddling back and forth, making the other guy go if they can, taking activations that don't do much, so Burnside's force moving forward, Couts burning another station, Yeah, I mean, there are things that want to get done, but they don't have any real influence. But the Confederate, not only with the pulling early out, which didn't get far, he would have needed a lot of movement points. It would be 10 to get me to there. No roads down there. The Confederate are forced to actually activate this. Well, they chose to activate this and start building some entrenchments there. Now that makes Warren's job a little harder, but here's the problem. If these all get immobilized, swinging around the side becomes easier. So like Hill, I can't activate Hill, but I got to make sure I activate other things. Over here, I activated this without doing anything, and I might do the same here at some point, but I felt like entrenching Longstreet made some sense. A little cavalry engagement down here where Wilson came in close, but not close enough to have an effect. Then Sheridan blew Hampton back. And over here, Smith overran Drury's bluff. That still doesn't free up the James, and there's no way to attack across that river. That's a Confederate bridge. No way I can do anything about it. Except build my own bridge somewhere, which I can't do as long as the hex that it connects to is still Confederate. So, but we are getting ourselves into position to launch an attack here into what? Chesterfield Courthouse, I think it's called. Might be able to launch something there with, what's his name? G something. Gilmore. Force the Confederates to do something with Hill. The Union actually used Sedgwick and attacked into here, burnt it, attacked into here, took a loss. And this is kind of a bad situation because I've got to get myself, I can't leave this open either. While I was here, I wasn't really going to stay in supply if Stuart fortifies here, which he's about to do. So that's kind of problematic. Of course, I didn't want to attack across the river at anyone. But yeah, because this is a minor, or this is a creek over here, which means that Stuart's not big enough. Interesting point. Oh well. So next turn, I'm going to have to fall back, probably all the way back to here if I can. I won't be able to, but unless I break down to do it. And that might be dangerous. The other problem is I'm disordered, which means if I am out of supply, I suffer from a worse part of the attrition table, I believe. Yeah, there's a bonus if you're organized on the attrition table. But I wanted to buy some time, and I think I'm kind of out of other units. I mean, I even flipped things with no effect. We're seeing that on both sides. There's a lot of kind of really, and this happens with these pulse games, jerking around, hey, I don't want to do something. Okay, I'll activate this for no effect, right? It's always something that weirds me out about these systems is, hey, I got more forces on the board. I guess it's kind of like there's more threats so that I have the strategic initiative more likely. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me that being spread out necessarily gives you the initiative in the way that the game kind of portrays it, so that you can control when your main force is going to activate, or your important force, which is in this case seems to be the Warren-Hill combination. The Union was able to outweight the Confederates, so Warren slipped around down on the mountain road. An entrenched hill. I mean, what do? At least that keeps these hexes from being able to be entered easily, but now the Confederates have to fall back again because their line just got bypassed. And there's sort of I like the fact that there's a randomness as to whether or not you can, get the jump on someone and move around them like that. It's not that bothers me. It's the fact that somehow splitting out units way down here and stuff has some effect on that. That feels gamey and weird to me. I don't know if the ACW does that. And Hancock didn't get enough movement to launch an attack on early. I swung around. Maybe I wanted to burn this sucker. It was the last action I took. If I burn it, I'm up here. The problem with that, of course, is I might have trouble getting by early. So I think I'm going to stick with it as it is. And I'll use some cav to burn that at some point, we say. We hope. It's 2 victory points. That's a lot of points. I kind of wish I had victory points tracked. But anyway, I can add them up if I want. It really doesn't make much difference. It's not like, you try to grab as many as you can. That's what it comes down to. There may be a point late in the game where it's like, oh, do I take more risks? Am I so far behind schedule that it's a problem? And now we got some entrenchments going on. For example, Stuart's going to entrench. Greg, he's really just rallying. I don't think there are any other passes that are kicking around. I hope. Yeah, I used Ewell to build his fort already. And everybody recovers and we go to the 3rd cycle. Okay, so we're in a situation beginning of the 3rd cycle. The Union's going to have to make its move to get to its new supply source wherever they're going to settle their supplies. And that's kind of problematic. Sedgwick, I think, is a little too far. This is the closest he can be, and he'll need this hex covered. That's going to be tough. He's kind of screwed up. He can move to here, but I got to figure out how to get another guy in here. I think given that situation, the Union kind of wants to move first. But how do the Confederates feel? Well, they don't really feel like they're in much of a rush at this point. And this was actually not a good turn for the Union, and largely because of Sedgwick there, because that's going to mean someone else has to get back there, and I have to worry about early kind of getting in a position that'll degrade the supply of my position, the Union position. And that could be a problem. One of the things with the Union, the Confederates can kind of spread their corps wherever the hell they like. The Union can't really do that. They could have some of it near the rail line, but it has to deal with a specific depot. And that means that all of it has to kind of be getting its supply off that line. I don't know how realistic that is. Certainly forces were transferred, without that kind of thinking. And in particular, if you have someone who is attached to a given corps temporarily, they have to go hunt out their proper corps. That causes some issues. Anyway. Don't know what I'm doing yet. Confederates win the first initiative, and dislodging any of these forces to try to screen Warren doesn't seem terribly valuable to me. Warren is not in supply at this moment. And that means, and this is, I like the thinking that you only have to be in supply 1 out of 3 turns, right? What I don't like is fixing it to the time record, where it's only on certain turns that are special for supply. Of course, there is that abstraction in every sequence of play. It just doesn't seem as kind of arbitrary as to certain points in the movement. But it's there, Why is it every 24 hours or, every 3 days or whatever we have to do it? Well, but it feels a little different when there's actual mechanisms that interrupt it. Anyway, the Confederates won the initiative, and they're going to take it. They're going to use Fitz-Lee to put him in Warren's way, to reduce his movement points. Warren has a long way to go if he wants to break out. And if I put a cav leader right next to him, he's going to lose a couple of movement points at the least. So that's 13. 1, 2, 3. so now the Union won the initiative. Tide roll, Lee's sick. And sorry for blowing things up here and going into too much detail when we're already over an hour, and for babbling more because of it. Warren can punch through Fitz-Lee. Costs 3 movement points to get into this hex, basically. And Fitz-Lee is going to withdraw because, I mean, Warren's more powerful. You can't stand up to him. So that'll allow... he'll retreat to here, Yellow Tavern. Now that's important because Yellow Tavern is exactly 15 spaces away from, I believe, whatever this thing is. So that's actually a pretty big deal. Now, if Warren could move 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, he'd be fine. But he probably needs to chase Fitz-Lee out of Yellow Tavern too. So he's going to need 9 movement points. And you really kind of have to pre-calculate these things to make your decisions. Well, I'm not going to be able to use 9. If I need to swing back this way, I need a lot of movement points. I'm going to try a forced march, see if I can get down there. The Confederates can't cut my supply back here because I can trace supply through units that moved this last impulse. It's only units that were there, that fortified, that have breastworks, that are going to get an interference with me. So, since we haven't done this before, let's look up the rules on forced march. It's not too exciting. I think it just disorders him. And adds movement points. It's going to add 2 extra movement points to the number, and the force is immediately disorganized, which means if Fitz-Lee were a little stronger, maybe he could get in the way. All right, we're going to try that. So we're at +6 instead. And remember, we need, what was it? At least a 9 total. We get that. All right, so we hit Fitz-Lee, or Fitz-Lee hits us, really. And on a 6, he's destroyed. He is not. He runs back 1, 2, 3, 4 to the key location. That was and won the next initiative. And I got to tell you, extricating the Confederates from this position is really, really difficult. Breckenridge was way back here in some pretty awful terrain. And I don't even know if I think I cheated getting him out of there. Yeah, there's no road there either. That's just a railroad, and those don't reduce costs. So that would be 4, 5. I think this is as well as he can do, actually. Is down here. I don't know that I terribly want to be there, because I think I'm going to be left alone out here. So, well, I mean, Early's not going to have a much easier time. But the thing is, falling back from where I was up in this Hanover Junction or that region is not at all easy. Fighting on the outskirts here, Gregg chased Hampton away. The way the combat chart is, it's really not that dangerous. With a 4-1, which is what we had, it was a +3. That's about what we got. You know, up to +4, it doesn't cause actual casualties to small forces, so it slows them down a little bit, you know. And then over here, Gilmore. Ooh, I don't know if yeah, I counted Smith in. Yeah, with an even attack because of Smith's support, ended up chasing Ransom away a little bit. Which, how big a deal is it? Well, I don't know. I mean, we got this whole siege of Richmond we're going to have to do, so might as well get started on it. And sometimes, I don't know, quite often in this game, I guess, things happen where you're like, yeah, I want to do that, but I want to delay it. And then the opportunity passes in a way you didn't think could happen. So, for example, I was looking at Wilson, and I'm like, well, I want to eventually get him into that hex. And I still do, I guess. But And I suppose it doesn't make a damn bit of difference because Longstreet, on the roll he got, could have gotten to here anyway. But there was some possibility Longstreet could have gotten to that hex, and that would be a problem. What's going on here is the Confederate line is beginning to set itself up in such a way that Warren's going to get stuck back here. And he's fine right for the upcoming turn, but he may be forced into a choice of having to fall back behind or in front of the Confederate line that's forming there. This is an interesting situation because the Confederates are kind of walling things off here and then down here. And once those entrench, that's going to cause a real problem to the Union. They're going to have to try to smash their way through. And there's going to be maybe a possible press your luck type situation where Warren may think he can make an attack coming out this way or something that would help, but if it doesn't work, he could end up out of supply at the end of the next turn. The Union's also got some potential problems over here, and maybe Burnside as well. They're kind of at the end of their supply line. If there's rain, they're in trouble. And they're spread out, so that's kind of problematic. The more spaces you're in, the harder it is to get supply to you. Forage might be easier, but as the game kind of, as the designer kind of notes, it's not just people dying when you're taking attrition. It's also trying to protect that tenuous supply line and throw additional guards into play, etc. We're winding down here. The Union still has to deal with Hancock and Sedgwick, but otherwise it's mainly been piddling little, flipping counters. The Union's flipped these two to avoid having to move Wilson. And after outweighting the Confederates along this line so that they had to pass, the Union was able to extricate Hancock and Sedgwick. Now, there was another possibility, which was Hancock thought about, and I almost did this, moving into here and then ending up back here, dropping Gibbon or somebody like that off, one of his divisional commanders, with a couple strength points, just to protect the escape route. Sedgwick would then move here. He'd be in supply from down there. He's in supply now, barely. Wilson's in supply barely from here. Everything's really tenuous. If there's rain, we're in trouble. But I feel like the line forming here is going to be the problem. Now, if the Confederates get a big jump on the Union, they'll be able to fling units down here. But the problem is, you don't know you have a big jump, right? You move one unit, and maybe the Union can get the next initiative and cross the river, and then you're screwed. The line, the fact that you moved up that close, it all causes problems. So it's very hard to draw the line right near where the Union's going to be. And I've also got this interesting situation where I would end up with a double line, which is kind of what I had before. On the bright side, though, the terrain's pretty good. But Richmond's not defended. It sort of is, because the supply line from here doesn't reach down there, and this is going to cut that supply line. So, and certainly if I have these, well, no, that's not that important. This is the bridge that's being used. But the Union may be throwing away whatever advantage they had on this turn, or not throwing it away, but they may have gotten stymied finally. No valley cycle of importance. The only thing that's going to happen is the supply base, and we get some artillery there so that Confederates can't just run there. There's an interesting thing with the counters. So a lot of the counters are double printed with the same thing. Now, I'm sure there's no real cost to printing both sides of a counter. It just kind of disturbs me in the sense of, could that have been used for something else on the other side as well? I would perhaps not think about that if I had a single just one side of those counters. And some of the counters in the game are double printed, many of them. So, you know, I guess there's no real harm in printing the same thing, same information on both sides. But we forgot to finish up the action cycle. The biggie here is, I guess there's some entrenchments going on over here. And, you know, so because Wilson wasn't able to move far enough, I had to commit Sheridan to do it. And Sheridan's forces are disorganized. Again, you know, the Confederates, or the Union is having some serious problem down here. Smith breaking into Manchester's suburbs. All right, so that's pretty much it. I'll finish up the turn and then just load this up without coming back probably.